Thanks, Meredith. Hey, everyone. So glad to have you here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules. And honestly, when I got involved in this business, I understood LMSs really well. But I've gotten to know restaurants a lot better over the last few years. And so if there's one thing I can appreciate, it's people taking time out of their busy days to come and listen to us talk about training. But what I've also learned about training in restaurants is there's no industry that I found that has as much information specific to each individual location or restaurant that is so important to the success of the restaurant as the restaurant industry. It's just was one of those things that was staggering to me when I got on and saw how much each server and each line cook and every single player in the restaurant had to know to make that machine work well. And I think that's what struck me most, and also what made me a believer in our product in Waitrainer. And we wanted to streamline train to make that easier on restaurateurs, make training more accountable, and create that consistency, or help restaurants create that consistency in the restaurant. And over the years, as I learned more and more about this product and more about the industry, I've gotten the opportunity to talk to folks like John Cunin, who right from the get-go is a guy that I was thoroughly impressed with. Really understood that you set culture, you set success in a restaurant and in any organization really by training, making sure everyone is on board. So I'm really excited to have John on with us today from Shanghai. He's helping some restaurants over there, and it just goes to show that there may be different languages and different styles, but hospitality and training is universal. So I'm going to turn this over to the other folks in the webinar. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy what we have to present.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Before we get back to John, we're going to start with a poll question, which you should now see on your screen. How important is product knowledge in your restaurant? And the different options here are: our menus are simple, not too important; very important, but difficult to teach; it's vital to our success. So take your time and answer these. We'll just wait until we see some answers come in here, and then we'll turn it over to John to talk after this. It looks like almost everyone has voted. And I think we're going to pull up the results for this. Okay, perfect. So this is kind of what you'd expect. It looks like our leader is, it's vital to our success. So we're going to turn it over to John. We're happy and excited to introduce John to all of you. John Michael Cunin is a guest service specialist with 40 years of experience in the food service and restaurant industry. John has worked with global brands such as Starwood, Peninsula, and MGM Resorts. John has developed a series of training content that until now has been reserved solely for his clients. A selection of this expert content is now available for purchase and download for Waitrainer Plus users. So over to you, John.
Hello, everybody. I hope that my being up at 4:06 a.m. in the morning is proof of my passion for training and guest experience. And just a bit to talk about product knowledge, I agree completely. I think it's one of the most important components of training because it's kind of the cornerstone of establishing trust with the guest. I think if you're going to really excel and succeed in the guest service environment, you have to get the people who you're serving to trust you. And product knowledge is a very, very important first step. It gives you credibility. It relaxes the people. It lets them It lets them embrace the idea that you're an expert and they're in good hands. So product knowledge, it breaks down into a couple of different pieces. The first piece is very general. It really has to do with understanding of raw materials, cooking technique, what's going on in your restaurant, in your kitchen, what's current and relevant relative to the menu that the people are looking at themselves, if there's any cultural tradition or history, kind of explain the intelligence behind the menu, how to put all of the products together and have an understanding of what they are and why they work together. That's the kind of thing that when people hear that and they see someone delivering that with a real sense of ease and confidence, it puts ease and confidence. It's contagious. The customer becomes at ease and confident that they've chosen the right place to have their meal and that they're fortunate to have someone who really is an expert and knows what they're doing. The second part of product knowledge is how it breaks down is relative to technique that is proprietary to your restaurant. And that's something that I think is important because you want to have that your salespeople table side who are taking care of your guests be able to explain the differentiator and what makes your restaurant special. So that becomes a very proprietary piece. Following up to that, those are the types of things that you need to drill every day. I mean, I really think that it's important that you keep this information fresh and current and exciting for your service team. And that's what makes it so that they embrace it and they become excited about it and they become inspired. Every human being wants to be successful. Everybody wants to feel smart. So,
and it looks like we have another poll question here, John.
Mm-hmm.
What is most difficult about staff training? And our options here are updating and creating content, finding the time, getting cooperation, evaluation, and measurement. So if everyone just wants to go look through these options and give us some responses, we'll take a look at those results in a moment. It looks like we're getting a greater variety of responses for this poll question. And here are the results. We've got 50% saying updating and creating content, 40% saying finding the time, getting cooperation is another 50% there, and evaluation and measurement, 60%. So turning that back over to you, John, talk a little bit with us about staff training. And
it's interesting that it was so evenly divided between the four things. The updating and creating of the content, I think really you need to be able to have kind of general best practices that's very current and relevant, and that's one of the things that I think we provide. And then you need to, if you're making changes to your menu or your beverage offerings, I mean, obviously that needs to be current and up to date. I know that that's time consuming, but the more you're able to use resources and productivity tools like what we're offering, I think the better off you are, and then you can focus on those things that are proprietary to your outlet. Finding the time it's just like anything else. It is a discipline. I'll tell you one thing, a short story here about what went on in Shanghai. When I first came here, I really believe in the pre-shift, and so I've tried to really establish a pre-shift culture, and there is a pre-shift element to the training that I have as well. It's a very clearly defined script with a step-by-step movement through the process of going through a pre-shift that should happen every day before each meal period with as many of the staff as you can possibly gather. It should be 100%, and the kitchen should participate, and it should be less than 10 minutes. And if you follow a script and you roll through it It's the type of thing that can be extremely powerful and very effective because that's where training really occurs. So what I did here in Shanghai is I tried to bring these people this script. And so obviously I'd do it in English and then I'd get it translated into Chinese, and we'd all gather, and I'm working with some very well-intended, hard-working folks who just didn't have the experience. And finally, after about 3 very frustrating weeks of trying to make it happen, I realized that I just had to go back to the basics and get into the discipline of finding the time in that. I said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to gather. Let's just get into the discipline of every day at 11:15 and 3:45 that we gather the team, and then just get everybody to the metaphorically the workout space and bring everybody together. And then once we had done that basic, and we had everybody in tune, and it took a couple of weeks. It was, and it was throughout the script. We just went ad hoc. We did the basic 86s and specials, and talked about things that were relevant, customer feedback, and changes made to the physical plant, whatever. But once we put the discipline in place, it was at that point that I could go back to the script, and like any training, whether it's physical or military or language learning or whatever, you got to you got to show up, and you got to have the discipline of doing it every day. So those pre-shift meetings were very important for me. The rest of the staff training, what are the most difficult parts? What is the most difficult part? For me, I think it's preparing the individual people. It's partly the getting cooperation. You've got to get the buy-in from your employees, and that is where you have to be able to present yourself as someone who is an expert and who genuinely cares about them. And then that's where they embrace the idea that they want to be an expert and realize the importance of being an expert, and they genuinely care. So it's a bit of a circle of love, so to speak, where you take care of the employees, they take care of the guests take care of the investors, and it comes back to you again in an endless circle. And then the evaluation and measurement piece of this difficulty of staff training, for me, it's whether you have a sophisticated POS and you use a polling system, whether you have Micros or Infogenesis, polling system like Avero or C2IT, I think it's important that you basically just are very strategic in it with your training. If you do a specific wine by the glass training, you want to keep an eye on who's successfully selling it, and then strategically go back to reinforce and find out what those people are doing to make that so successful, and make sure that you spread that around, and go to your lowest performers and talk to them and find out what they're doing and help them become A-level performers. So the evaluation and measurement part is obviously very important. It really completes the circle.
Great, and it looks like we have our next poll question, John. So it's, is your content complete and up to date? And our options here are, we're working on it, we practice mostly hands-on training, our content is up to date, and we're looking for new training materials. So again, if we can ask everyone to just go through and mark the answers that most apply to them, we'll take a look at what the results are. And let's take a look at our results. So we have 36% say we're working on it, 18% for we practice mostly hands-on training. Our content is up to date. 18% of you have up-to-date content. And then we're looking for new training materials. Looks like this is most of us, 64%.
Taking a look at that, I can see, I might have expected these results. I think that everybody's looking for new training materials. There's a lot of different things on the marketplace. I think what's most important is that you have material that is current and is relevant to your market segment. And that changes all the time. I think that it needs to be a bit of a living and breathing thing. People change and people's expectations change. I tell my staff, I say, look, you know, there's out of 100%, you've got 10% who really aren't paying attention to the service that much anyway. 80% are generally pretty easy to please, and it's the 10%, maybe even the 3 to 5% at the very top of the tier where they're the most difficult people who are paying the closest attention, whether they're professionals or just people who really care about the service piece. You shoot for pleasing those people, and those people they're very current, they're very aware, and they have very individual needs, and they want them to be listened to. And in today's world with big data and a lot of people doing, the best people doing a really good job of dealing with their individual needs and wants, the competition becomes really quite fierce. And I think it's important that you have training that is very current and relevant and addresses that and sends your people tableside with a real high level of preparedness, not so much in scripting, but in their ability to ad-lib and their understanding of the process.
So John, can you speak a little bit to introducing new content to your staff?
Yes, I mean I have a really large content library. Having worked for Starwood and Peninsula and MGM and Wynn and Venetian, I mean I've had a lot of experience with the big companies that have very robust and very intelligent best practice training laid out in a very intelligent manner. I also worked for people like Groupe Landucasse and Think Food Group, and some people who are very forward in their thinking and have a very meticulous approach to putting together a way of managing the guest service experience. What I've tried to do is distill all of that down into a customized training that, based on my experience tableside, and I still spend a lot of time tableside, is really effective. And so you want to create your own content library, and what I do is I go to that library and I'm constantly pulling pieces out of it and revolving that through the pre-shift process. And so I take pieces of the content library, which can cover everything from preparedness to certain customer situations to product knowledge. And if you're paying close attention to what's going on the floor, and you're listening to your staff, which I think is extremely important, and then you're listening to your customers, which obviously is quite important, then you take that feedback and you figure out, okay, where do I need to focus my training? And it becomes a very straightforward process to strategically go into the content library, pull the pertinent information that targets the situation you're trying to improve or remedy, and bring it up on a daily basis at pre-shift. Whether you do it for a week, a month, or forever, that's up to you. And if you're measuring the results carefully, that becomes an easier question to answer. But that's how I introduce content. I have a very current and relevant library that covers all of the aspects of guest service training. I do have position-specific training: manager, host, hostess, server, bartender, runner, busser, and kitchen. I think that, again, these position-specific items, through those different pieces, there are things that are universal. Manager and kitchen are a little more specific. And then the people, the folks on the floor who have the face-to-face interaction in the table side or front door environment all have some very universal and general rules and regulations, policies and procedures that are industry best practices, and that's covered in the content that we provide.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the content you've written, John, and how it works so well with Waitrainer Plus?
Well, I think it breaks down into small pieces. You know, what I've tried to do is, just like a triathlete, I've tried to break it down into these three pieces of guest experience, technical expertise, and product knowledge, and those three things break down a little bit into the guest experience. I think breaks down into an internal psychological preparedness that is intended to set yourself up to engender trust and loyalty in the guest, and then some scripted items that help you in the ad lib process, because it's a very logarithmic, endless process, the human-to-human interaction. Anything can happen tableside. We all know that. Technical expertise breaks down into preparedness and execution, and I basically take those two parts and separate them, break them down into small digestible bites that can be presented in the pre-shift and then can be pulled and be very strategic to address certain problems where you're failing. A lot of times, whether it's a guest comment cards or secret shopper surveys, you're going to find areas where you're consistently not reaching the level of success that you want to reach, and that's where you strategically pull out your tools from this content and deliver them in the pre-shift or whatever medium you've got. The other part of technical expertise is actually the execution itself, and I think in today's world there's a lot of common sense and good judgment that goes into that, but at the same time I think we all know what the customer, especially that top 3 to 5% of the really informed, potentially difficult customer, what they're expecting as far as service expertise and execution, and so I address that again in a step-by-step process, from the reservationist taking the phone call, through the valet, through the hostess, all the way from the beginning to the end of the tableside experience, and then the exit and the follow-up is addressed in the training. And then product knowledge, again, I'll just go back and talk a little bit about general materials and cooking technique. These are all things that are addressed. I do have a glossary that has a lot of food terms that I think are important for people to know. I mean, in some restaurants, obviously cheeses are going to be more important than others, and whether it's a Mexican restaurant is going to have pepper training, whereas a French bistro may not. But I try to cover all of the things that are relevant in the glossary and have it so that people can go with tableside and be very, very smart.
We do have some questions already for you, John. Let me just get to our first one here. This is in reference to the pre-shift meeting that you mentioned. It looks like this person said pre-shift meetings, they do them but not consistently, sometimes once or twice a week. How important is it to do a pre-shift every day?
Well, I think it's extremely important to do a pre-shift every day, just for the discipline of it. I think one of the things that's really important is, as an employer, whether you are the owner of the business or you're the man, you're running the show, you've got to display to them that you're disciplined and that you genuinely care and that you're an expert at what you do. And if you have that discipline, even if the pre-shift is 3 minutes long, just the bringing together, because there's always going to be something that is relevant every meal period, whether it's an expectation of the volume, a VIP guest, an 86th item, whatever. You don't want to rely on a clipboard or some kind of ad hoc, this person's the lead person who's going to tell everybody else. I mean, I really think that the bringing together of the pre-shift shows people that you've got your act together, that you're disciplined, and you genuinely care, and that is important. It engenders that same attitude within the individual service themselves, or service people themselves.
Okay, and it looks like we have another question here. Does your content work for different types of restaurants?
Absolutely. I think, restaurant, the term is very, very broad in general, and from QSR to extremely high-end fine dining, there's a broad expanse. But, a guest is a guest. It's a very intimate, unique situation for anyone to try and manage a team of people in, because what could be more intimate than something you're going to consume and eat, and what could be more complex than a product that sometimes is conceived that morning, prototyped that afternoon, rolled out in a sales presentation to the sales team, then it goes into sales, it's produced, delivered, consumed, and paid for all in one day. The complexity of that is huge. But I think it applies whether you're in a simple QSR or you're in fine dining. People are coming to eat and they expect to be served. And they want they want to be confident that they have someone who genuinely cares about them and knows exactly what they're doing, is an expert at what they do. And that applies across the board. And my content addresses that in a series of very well thought out, well put together, scripted steps. And so the answer to the question is, yeah, different. While my background, I have a lot of fine dining in my background, I do have a lot of casual dining and even fast casual experience as well. And I've brought it all together into something I think is relevant in all segments.
And we have one that just came in, John. What is the best way to get the kitchen to buy into the pre-shift meeting? So this is back on the pre-shift. Our guest asks, they have a hard time getting their kitchen to participate.
Well, I think you've got to find a decision maker or someone in the kitchen, particularly, I'm sure at some point the kitchen has a comment about the quality of this, whether it's the speed of the pickup or the having to explain dishes to people at the expo station, or whether it's they're not selling the special. The kitchen's probably always going to have a comment. And I think that, they've got to be respectfully brought into the process and asked, particularly when they deliver that complaint or that comment, say, hey, look, can you help me? I've got the solution to this in bringing everybody together in this pre-shift. And if I could just get your participation and your feedback on how we might best address this, I'd really appreciate your help. And get them involved in a very respectful way in the process. I think telling them, no, it's your responsibility, you've got to present a dish every day. Well, in certain situations, an intelligent chef is going to realize the importance of that, and they're going to do it. But just as everybody says, I don't have time to do it, the kitchen's probably as prone as any department, if not the most prone, to come up with that excuse. But I think that for them to understand, if you bring them into the show them the guest comment cards, show them the secret shopper surveys, show them the sales mix reports on your off of your POS, and then explain to them what you're trying to accomplish, and then how your when I say your collective agenda, that person, the chef, his or her agenda, it dovetails together. I think it becomes apparent to the kitchen that maybe I need to go out there. I'm as a matter of fact, not maybe, I'm sure I need to go out there because I know I could make an impact, and I know that someone's going to be watching it and stewarding it and measuring it. I think if you make sure that you let the kitchen know, I'm going to be a steward for this. If you present this, I'm going to make sure that you get your money's worth out of that presentation, and I'm going to measure the results and show them to you. That generally closes the deal.
Okay, and then here's another one, John. This is in relation to Waitrainer Plus. Is the content that you're providing with Waitrainer Plus, can you edit it? That
might be more of a question for you, Meredith. I can certainly edit it in a moment with by pulling it up on the screen, is once it's in the Waitrainer environment, I think that question may bounce back to you guys. There may be a part of it that can be edited, and obviously, as you know, this particular item is quite important, and obviously, people have their own needs and their own kind of dynamic changes to their restaurant. But my content over the course of time will evolve. I mean, I think that anybody who signs up for my content can count on me to having versions come out on a regular basis that they can either opt in, or if they're very happy with the existing, they can stay with the existing. But the answer to the question is, yeah, I can edit it, and I'm constantly updating and editing it and refining it. As to can that be done in the Waitrainer environment, I would kick that question back to you.
And actually, John,
Great.
John, this is Todd Edmond, the CEO. I'm still actually hanging out. And I wanted to say that one of the concepts originally with Waitrainer, we wanted to create a system that was really easy for restaurants to create their own content. And the reason we started working with, experts like John Cunin was because we realized that the restaurants wanted to be able to customize and change everything. They also wanted a base, some place to start. And that's really the intention of John's content. So John's content's already in a Waitrainer. You can just click a couple of boxes and assign it to your staff, and they'll get emails and they can start training right away. But you can also go in and make modifications to that content, decide that you don't want to do this course this week, you want to do that course. You can actually modify the text of the courses or replace the images. So inside of Waitrainer, everything is actually editable via a straightforward interface. And we know that restaurants want that good basic content, but we also know every restaurant is unique and wants to emphasize different things. So yes, absolutely, can edit all of the content in Waitrainer, including John's training content.
So it looks like we have one last question here, I think that we're going to take, which is, how has web-based training changed restaurants?
Well, I think that it's changed restaurants in that it's put another club in the bag or arrow in the quiver. I think it's a productivity tool like anything else. Is if you embrace it and kind of learn how to use it and then apply it to your routine, I think you're going to find out that it takes it easy. I mean, education and training have always been a bit of a burr under the saddle, so to speak. And it generally, when times get tough in a restaurant, that's the first financial deck chair over the rail, usually, when the boat starts rocking. And basically, again, it begins a downward spiral because of the importance of the training piece. And a lot of people come into this business, they're not trained educators. They're not certified trainers. They're not, they haven't, education and training is a learned skill. A lot of people don't have that learned skill. To have all of this put together and pieced together into one spot that you can kind of click and deliver, that's an amazing productivity, time-saving tool, and can really lead to some very, very measurable and meaningful success.
It's been interesting, John.
John, you've been...
So it's been interesting. One of the things that we've seen on the Waitrainer side is there's this real division of the restaurants that first adopted Waitrainer. We thought, restaurants all over the board will adopt this thing. And what it was is the first adopters to Waitrainer weren't restaurants that were suffering. The first adopters to Waitrainer were the restaurants where training was the most important. And that was like a pleasant surprise, right? It was these restaurants that really understood the importance of making sure their staff was completely on board and that service was consistent. Those are the people that seek us out. And those are most of our first customers. And so we look where Waitrainer is being sold, and it's being sold in the big culinary centers. That's where the vast majority of our customers are, because it's really those restaurants most dedicated to service, most in competition, that are facing the biggest challenges and need the highest level of service that ended up adopting and being successful with Waitrainer. And I think that this is where the content that you provide, John, actually helps level the playing field, because a lot of those restaurants already had great training content. I think this allows restaurants that know training is important to really be on a level playing field with the people that invested up front in these huge training manuals. And I think that's really an exciting thing. And that's sort of how we've seen this web-based training evolve. I think that's about all we have time for.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yep. There's always that few international second delay that makes these things slightly awkward. But I think we're about at the end of our thing. And John, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your early morning today to join us here. And Meredith, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap it up.
Great. Thank you both to John Cunin and to Todd Edmond for sharing with us during the webinar. And we just want to point out, here's our Let's Connect page. You can check us out at waitrainer.com, or you can give us a call at 541-430-6861 if you have any questions from today's webinar. You can also feel free to join the conversation with us on Twitter and Google+. You can join live anytime with our hashtag that you've seen in use today. And if you are interested in John's training and Waitrainer Plus, do give us an email at sales@waitrainer.com. We look forward to talking with you about your restaurant. So have a great day, and thank you again for all of your time.